the famed venture capital firm Andreessen Horowitz just published some new research that suggests we're, quote, at an inflection point when it comes to generative AI in the enterprise. They say that while generative AI took the consumer landscape by storm in 2023, it actually reached over $1 billion of consumer spend in record time. In 2024, the revenue opportunity will be multiples larger in the enterprise. So, in this research, A16Z, which is kind of their nickname, I'll refer to them as that, spoke with dozens of Fortune 500 and top enterprise leaders and then surveyed 70 more of them to understand how they're using, buying, and budgeting for Gen AI. They said, quote, "We were shocked by how significantly the resourcing and attitudes towards Gen AI had changed over the last 6 months." So it turns out that these enterprise leaders, at least the ones they talked to, despite still having reservations about Gen AI deployment, are overall planning to triple their budgets with Gen AI. Now, this full rundown is really well worth reading, but a couple highlights, Paul, jumped out at me. They said that nearly every single enterprise we spoke with saw promising early results of Gen AI experiments and plan to increase their spend anywhere from 2x to 5x in 2024 to support deploying more workloads to production. This budget also appears to be shifting from innovation budgets to more permanent software line items. They also said that enterprise leaders are currently mostly measuring ROI by increased productivity generated by AI. Most of them currently do not have the in house technical talent to implement and scale Gen AI. They're spending a ton on implementation, and foundation model providers are kind of filling that gap by providing professional services. And then when it comes to which model and model providers people are going with, if I'm interpreting their chart correctly, 100% of the people I surveyed are either testing OpenAI's models or have them in production. 66% say they have them in production, 34% are testing. The next most popular models being used come from Google, which 63% are either testing or have in production. Llama is the third highest one. They have 6 total. Anthropic is fourth, and then Mistral and Cohere are way, way at the back of the pack. So it sounds like also based on this research, enterprises are overwhelmingly focused on building in-house right now versus buying. And they're still quite cautious about external facing use cases, given issues they're trying to overcome with hallucinations and PR possible disasters, which makes sense. The most popular use cases that these people reported were either focused on internal productivity right now or stuff that gets routed through a human, which marketing falls into, stuff that a human marketer or business person is taking a look at, making sure it's ready for prime time. So I'll stop there. Paul, you have tons of on the ground insight into enterprises in the work you're doing with them, your talks, your conversations you're having basically daily with enterprise leaders. Like, how accurate do you find A16Z's assessment here?
Yeah, I thought it was really good. I mean, I really like these reports that are just quick hitting. Like they
Me too.
have there's like 16, I think, findings and just like a paragraph or two about each, like a quick read. I definitely recommend people go check out the full thing. The budget numbers really jumped out to me. I mean, those are not insignificant numbers that they were throwing around.
Yeah.
Increase of 2 to 5x, tripling of budgets. Like that's wild, but it makes sense as you move from the innovation budget to the operations budget, basically, that this would happen. So I wouldn't say I've heard these kinds of numbers being thrown around. That those were a bit eye opening. But everything else they said definitely jives with what we're hearing.
Mm.
I would imagine they talked to a lot of tech companies, but when we talk to Fortune 500 companies, sit down with their leaders, like these are similar things we're hearing. It's that the obvious ROI play is efficiency and productivity, but people want to kind of get beyond that and figure out ways to do it. And what we always advise companies is you have to benchmark performance now, and then you have to have KPIs that you will measure to determine if what you're doing is working. So whether this is a pilot project with a large language model, if you're just applying it to email writing or article writing or video script writing or podcasting, whatever it is, like whatever you're applying it to, know how you're going to measure the existing performance and then how you're going to measure against it and what success looks like. I thought the multi-model future definitely jives with what we're hearing.
Yeah.
So they're all testing a collection of models and may actually scale with a collection of models because some are, and we'll talk a little bit about this with your experience with Claude in a minute. Some are just better at others than at certain use cases. So like we have ChatGPT, we have Claude, we have Gemini internally, and I don't know that I would bet on any one of them. Like sometimes the other one is just better at a certain use case. And if that use case is critical to us, I don't want to lock us in to say, hey, Mike, sorry, you have to use ChatGPT because I'm not going to pay the other $20 a month for you to have a Claude subscription. It's like, no,
Right.
like we're going to, with the amount of value you can create with that $20 is massive. The other thing that people want to avoid getting locked in, and then they want to quickly tap into advancements and I hear this all the time. Like, we don't want to lock into a 12-month agreement with this company because what happens if GPT-5 comes out and it obsoletes that company? And we're going to hear some examples of that in a couple minutes. The other one is desire for control stems from sensitive use cases and enterprise data security concerns. Hear that all the time. I
Mm.
spent a bunch of time with a big law firm recently, and this was like 1A. It was the number one thing they were asking about was how do we protect our data and our clients' data? Which of these models can we actually trust with that kind of stuff? And then the other one I thought that definitely makes a ton of sense is cloud service provider driven decisions. If you're already in, and again, big enterprises all the time get this. If you already are a Microsoft customer, you're going to likely use Azure. If you're a Google Cloud customer, you're going to use some model through Google, probably Gemini. And then if you're AWS, you're probably going to go with Anthropic, Amazon's own models, or Cohere or something like that. So in a big company where you already have a trusted provider who already has access to all of your data, you are way more likely to trust them to infuse this stuff in, and you don't have to get them through procurement again. That's the challenge we're seeing with a lot of these kind of more startup models in the Gen AI space, the companies in that space, is getting through procurement is really hard, especially if they want access to your data. So overall, again, a quick read, it's probably like a 7-minute read. Um, Definitely aligns with what we're seeing and hearing in the marketplace.
So I found the chart really interesting where they talked about this specific models from specific companies that enterprises are using. So like OpenAI and Google, according to the chart, which you can go look at, are basically ahead by a mile, and the open source move is like pretty clearly Llama. Are we moving towards a reality in the enterprise where even if they are using multiple models, it's like a very small number of them?
I would assume so. Like, I think it's going to be like the cloud space. You know, it's like AWS, Google Cloud, and Microsoft Azure. That's pretty much it. And
Yeah.
I could see language models largely falling into that realm where there's three major players. One of them, OpenAI slash Microsoft, probably is dominant, unless Google Gemini really powers ahead, which, you know, is certainly possible. And then you've got, you know, Anthropic out there, which obviously they're getting a lot of love for their updated Claude models. But I think it seems very viable. And again, we're going to talk about a couple other topics today that sort of point in the direction of there's going to be a small collection of dominant players, and then there's going to be some other players.
So, some final thoughts here. I just had a question on kind of do you have any take on what this might mean for like enterprise focused startups, not these big companies, the ones trying to break into enterprises with AI solutions?
I mean, each of the points sort of stack against those startups.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's indicating it's going to be a lot harder for these companies that are trying to build their own models or that are, you know, wrappers for the existing models. I think it's just it's a continually steepening uphill battle to compete with companies that can spend billions building these models and acquiring the talent. And yeah, I think the next main topic, we're going to see this played
Yeah.
out. Like even the ones who are raising billions still have uphill battles. So yeah, I think it's a challenging landscape for the companies that don't have tens of thousands of NVIDIA chips and can pay $1 million bonuses to get the top AI researchers to switch over to their company. It's a very, very competitive environment right now. And you got some of that even listening to Sam talk. Like they asked about the competition and um, it's just wildly competitive for the customers, for the talent, for the compute power, for the data.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the data, then it becomes even harder. Which is, again, we've always said it's what Google has. They got lots and lots of proprietary tools and proprietary data. Um, OpenAI has it sort of through Microsoft, through their partnership with Microsoft, but didn't inherently have their own proprietary data to start with. It's where Amazon has, potentially a say in this, and it's where XAI slash Twitter slash X slash Grok slash Elon, like they have the X Twitter feed that other people don't. Meta, certainly a player. Like, it's really hard to compete with the companies that have the money and the resources to do the compute and get the people, and they have proprietary data.
Yeah.
If you don't have the proprietary data and you have the money, it may not matter.